Yes, absolutely. And the roof is something that is a hot topic when selling a house or buying a house, so it's important to discuss. I'll preface it with every carrier is different, so every carrier has their own set of underwriting rules. Some carriers say the age of the roof is 20 years, that's the max age that they will bring in a new policy. Some have 15 now. Some break it up with architectural shingle versus a 3-tab shingle. Some say they won't take a new home with over a 10-year-old 3-tab shingle. Some carriers, the oldest age for a 3-tab shingle is 10 years old.
Okay.
So it's really important to know your carrier and what their regulations are. So it's easier for selling, if you're the seller, it's easier if you're selling your property. You can talk to your insurance agent. The person buying, whatever carrier they're using will be different, potentially. However, you'll get an idea of what the regulations are. And I think often when someone's selling the home, they don't take time to figure out the troubles that their buyer is going to go through with an older roof. And I find too, everyone loves their home. They're selling their home, they've owned it for a long time. You know, the roof is original potentially, but it's their home. They've had no issues. But when a carrier is looking at the home for someone else purchasing it, they're looking at it now and saying, hey, we see potential issues down the road. So the second part of the whole roofing situation has been that there are, and not all roofers, but there are roofers who go around and try to help you submit an insurance claim. Insurance is for the damage, the wind damage, for hail damage. If there's a storm and your roof is damaged due to that storm, you should file a claim. That is what insurance is for. However, it does hurt everyone when a roofer goes around town and has and helps you file a claim for a date that they're just kind of guessing to fit into a wind damage. And I'm not saying this, I know a lot of great roofers, and I insure a lot of great roofers, so I'm not saying this across the board. I just know that has really impacted carriers. Now the roofing age has to be young, you need a newer roof, and you need a roof that is in good shape. And they want a roof that has, we call it the lifespan of the roof. They want to know that there's years left on the roof. So if you do have an older roof, let's say you're purchasing a home and the roof is 25 years old, it is very hard to get a standard market carrier to pick it up. So we're talking about all the carriers you think of: State Farm, Allstate, Erie, all your typical standard market carriers. They're not really picking up the 25-year-old roofs right now. There can be exceptions. The exception is if you hire a roofer to come out, do an inspection of the roof, and they need to write out that, well, they'll give their honest feedback. But if they do say and can say that the roof is in good shape and that it does have years left on it, that the lifespan of the roof is not ended, it's not next year, that there's years left on the roof, you can get carriers to waive that and still rate the policy.
Is that, years ago we would hear this term of roof certificate. Is that kind of like a roof certificate, or is that different?
Yes, that could be interchangeable.
All right. Because that is something interesting that I didn't realize. Well, back in the day, it didn't seem like it held much weight, but it seems like nowadays it's holding a lot more weight for insurance. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are surprised that they're asked to do it. They're taken aback. And I would just say expect it. If your roof is older, for a 3-tab shingle, if it's older than 10 to 15 years, architectural shingle, if it's older than like 20 years, I would just expect that you're going to be asked to get one. And they're not expensive. I mean, I think it's around $150, and prices could change and vary with each roofer, but it's, for me, that's well worth being able to get in with a good carrier. And it doesn't matter, the buyer could do it, the seller could do the roof inspection. One thing I will say is, if we have the buyer and, if someone is selling their home, the buyer can't get a roof inspection before they purchase the home. So it would, in good faith, if the seller is trying to work with the buyer, that they would get the roof inspection so that the buyer has the certificate to give to the insurance. Because often I've seen that a carrier
says, we'll write it, we need that roof inspection saying it's in good condition. And then the buyer's saying, well, I'll get it right after I purchase the home. Well, that's not going to work for most carriers.
Right. That makes sense. And it's been interesting because when I first started noticing it, it was back at the end of last summer. So the summer of 2024, when I started noticing it coming up more. And it was interesting because there was some homes there's still competition on. But I had clients who were competing and the roof was original. They knew that they were going to have to replace it, but they didn't negotiate it because it was a competitive situation. They wanted it. And so they got a 30-day rider, I think it was called. And so they had 30 days from the time they purchased to replace the roof. So I thought that was interesting. And
certain carriers will do that.
Okay.
Yep.
The main thing, though, that I try to tell my sellers is you would not believe how many people have no idea how old their roof is.
Right. Oh.
So the roof inspection certificate is key for that. But be prepared, because it could come to a situation where you're down the road, you're trying to get insurance, and you can't get insurance because the roof is too old, and then it becomes a big mess, and then it's a negotiation, and it's okay, the house needs a new roof, and the buyer can't get insurance for it, and then it's just a lot easier to sort of go through that and deal with the process ahead of time. Be
proactive. I think that is the most important thing for the seller. Be proactive. And for the buyer, if I was a real estate agent working with a buyer with an older roof, I would say these are the steps we need to do. Because if you come to an insurance agent and you say, I want to insure this home, I have no clue the age of the roof, like red flags are going off, because we have to put in a year. Like it's not like, oh, this roof seems to be in good condition. We have to put in a year. So do your due diligence, whether the inspection, if they can give you an age of the roof, whether you have the roof inspector come out and they can give you about an age of the roof. Again, if they can like narrow it down to a window and give you their best guess of the age of the roof, we can't make up ages, but I would have the age when you go to your insurance agent, and I would have the age so that you're not just throwing it out there. Okay. I've heard this from a couple people, a couple agents who said that there was insurance companies who are requesting the home inspection report. Have you ever heard of that? Not often. Okay. Not often. I'm sure there are carriers that would request it. I'm not with the carriers I'm working with. Okay. I'm trying to remember, I'm sure I've had it happen before that has been requested, but I wouldn't say that's common. Yeah, I didn't think that was common either. And it was interesting because I had heard that and I thought, that's interesting. Right. That's something specific that they were looking for. But I have over the years noticed that getting into the process and bringing the insurance party into it, the sooner the better, because there was one instance where I had someone and the seller didn't disclose that there was a massive water event. Now they did everything they needed to remediate the issue, but how soon into the process of purchasing a home do you recommend them bringing you in? Right. And that brings up a really good point, the claims. It's very important. I think sometimes sellers think that those claims will just not be picked up. Right. When I do a quote, so if a buyer comes to me and I'm putting in their quote, it will pull claims on the house up to 5 years old. Okay. It will pull every claim up. And my underwriter gets even more details than I do on it. So my suggestion is to disclose at the beginning. Let's start working with a local agent. And it does matter that it's an agent that is working with you, not just a call center, that you're calling 1-800 and you get any person who answers the phone, that you're working with a local agent that you trust, and they will walk you through the process because they will need documents. It's okay if there's a big water loss on the home. It's okay, but you want to know that up front. You don't want to be going to settlement and a week before, it's like we need all these documents before and I've had that happen. That we need all these documents and they're having a hard time finding documents. The biggest thing the insurance carriers want to know is that it has been fixed. So the problem's not going to happen again. So it's worse not to disclose it because it will come up. And if I didn't go to when I work with the buyer and I do their quote, I will look at the claims and I will be able to let you know right away, this is information we're going to need. So you get it on the front end, as opposed to if I didn't go to my underwriter or know what my underwriter needed, and I just went to submit the policy, it could red flag them. They could come back and say, hey, this is a week before settlement. We're not writing this unless you have all this documentation or some documentation, or the buyer has said, the seller has said that this has been fixed at their house.
Well, it's interesting because I always find that people are sometimes nervous to disclose, and I find it's always better to over disclose.
Always better.
And it's interesting because I had clients who had their sump pump failed. So their basement flooded. I didn't know this, so I was getting ready to list. They had everything fixed, and I said, we need to disclose this anyways for multiple reasons, because A, it's going to come up on the insurance, but also since it was just recently fixed, maybe something wasn't fixed properly, just like no one had an issue that had happened, and they were appreciative that they knew, okay, that happened and everything was fixed. Because even neighbors, after you move in, they say, oh, did you know that? Right.
You're going to find out at some point, right? Might as well know at the front end.
And people feel like they're being honest and they're disclosing this, and it's not a big deal.
It's not, and it's important. It's important for the buyer to know what they're coming into, and the buyer is still probably going to want to buy your home.
Yes.
But it's just so important from the insurance side. I think on the buyer's side, just disclose information. If you haven't had it fixed, you need to have the work done. But I would say, 9 times out of 10, the work has been done. Just disclose it. Tell them what you've done to fix it. That's all they need for the carrier.
Yes.
The sump pump, the water damage, like pipers, sump pump, those are also really important to disclose at the beginning, because you want even the buyer to be proactive to make sure that they don't keep dealing with those issues.
Yes.
Because those are some of the more reoccurring issues. And I did have a client who came to me. They purchased a home and they had 2 water claims in a year, and their homeowners policy then was potentially going to be canceled. And it's just nice to know what to be looking out for.
Definitely. It's interesting when you get into this, the world of real estate, and you see all of sort of the behind the scenes with insurance. The other thing I wasn't aware of is, I think a lot of times people think flood insurance is specifically for an actual flood.
Right.
So can you speak a little bit about what flood insurance is really for and who potentially could need it?
Yes. And I'd be curious in Annapolis how many people have flood insurance. I don't think it's that many, which is interesting because we're a coastal town.
Right.
And we have the bay right here, and a lot of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County is on the water.
Right.
So flood insurance is really important to understand. When it rains, so like a flood, if it rains or if there's like a sea swell.
The other thing that I was told is, so for example, living in a townhouse, if you have water that comes in from outside, it's
not covered.
Is not covered.
Right.
And I think a lot of people aren't aware.
People don't know that, but it's not going to be covered on flood policy either.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
2 properties have to be flooded for a flood policy. See, people don't know. No one knows it. No one knows it. But I'm also shocked how many people do not have flood insurance. Like Eastport, if I'm living in Eastport, I'm having flood insurance.
Okay.
Like even if, because the maps, trust the maps to a point, but 20% of the damage comes outside of like the more high-risk areas.
Interesting. Talk a little bit about flood insurance. So when there's multiple, I guess, reasons for flood insurance. And one of the reasons that I learned about this is because I listed a home that was on the bay. But interestingly enough, when you looked at the flood map, the water didn't come from the bay, which was right in front of it. It came from behind it, which was an inlet.
Right.
So a lot of times you need flood insurance, but it might not be for the reasons that you think.
Right.
And so I don't think enough people have a full understanding of what flood insurance
Right.
is.
Flood insurance is very important to understand. And I do think a lot of Annapolis area does not have flood insurance, which I find very surprising, and Anne Arundel County in general, because 20% of flood losses are outside the high-risk areas.
Wow, okay.
So just because you're not in a high-risk area, if you're close to the water, you should consider getting flood insurance, because it's not just coming off the bay. It would be any area that's flooded, and you do want to know the regulations for flood insurance when it will kick in.
Okay.
2 properties have to be underwater.
Oh, interesting.
For flood insurance to take off.
Okay.
But that's not really that hard to happen if it is a true flooding. The interesting part also of the flood and water damage that most people don't understand is if you have water damage due to water coming from outside to inside, that's called flood insurance. We term that flood. Okay. That's not called flood insurance. We term that flood. So if you have water coming from outside to inside your home, that is considered flood, and all homeowners policies exclude flood.
Okay.
So the homeowners would never cover a flood, which would be due to water coming, off the bay or, behind the example that you were giving. If there's water coming from outside to inside, it's considered flood. It is not covered on your homeowner's policy.
Okay. So if let's say there's a row of townhouses, and let's say somebody's pipe bursts and goes into another unit, what sort of coverage would you need for that?
So pipe burst is a comprehensive peril.
Okay.
So that's always going to be covered on your homeowner's policy.
Okay.
So that is a covered claim. So pipe burst is covered claim.
Okay.
The sewer or drain. So if we're thinking sump pump or up through your toilets, that also can be covered, but that is an endorsement that you have to add on to your policy.
Okay.
It's not always on your policy.
Okay.
A lot of carriers offer the $5,000.
Okay.
$5,000 is not going to help you redo your bathroom if you have it come up through your toilet, or redo the floors if it comes up through your sump pump.
Okay.
So I always advise people to take a look at that, because that is one of the more common claims.
Okay.
Coming up through the sump pump or up through a toilet, and it is an endorsement, not a comprehensive coverage.
Okay, interesting. Okay. And then actual flood insurance is the type of insurance where 2 or more homes are. Yeah,
there's a lot of different pieces, a lot of different variables that go into it, but it would have to be 2 properties that are underwater.
Okay, so
where it would kick it on.
Your advice would be, because each situation is different, each home is different, everybody has different elevations, etc. Is just to sort of go over the current policy that you have, discuss what you might need that you didn't even know you might need. Because I think a lot of people just request the coverage, and especially if they're calling some of the larger carriers, they're not somebody local that doesn't know. So.
They may not even know where you live.
Correct.
If you're calling a 1-800 number or talking to someone on the phone, they may not pull up a map and even be able to advise that you get flood insurance. I would go over all the coverages with a local agent. Ask them, what are the add-ons that I should have on my policy? Some people say, hey, I just want the bare minimum, just want the comprehensive perils. But know that if you have a sump pump, if you water come up through your sump pump, that will not be covered. If it comes up through your toilet, that will not be covered if you don't have that endorsement. If you have a loss, let's say you have a fire and now you have to rebuild to a new code, that will not be covered, because insurance builds back your home as it was, not as it needs to be.
Oh, interesting.
So ordinance or law is another endorsement that's important to have on your policy. And if you talk to a local agent, if you talk to an agent that you have a relationship with, your agent will talk you through this. They should talk you through this. If they're not, you should get a new agent. But they should walk you through so you understand your policy and how you're covered.
Right.
And if you choose not to be covered that way, you can make that decision. But at least you know what you're covered, what is covered and what is not. And then the flood is something to discuss with your agent. If you're locally in Anne Arundel County and you're closer to the water, we've seen so many things happen, globally, but here in the US, it's better to be prepared. Now, say flood policies aren't very expensive.
Right.
I would say on average, we're talking $600 a year.
Right.
That's not a lot of money unless you're in a higher risk flood zone, but $600 just to have the peace of mind that if something were to happen that you were covered doesn't seem like a lot of money.
Well, it's interesting too because we just now have a new addenda that specifically goes over insurance because a lot of people are surprised. So the current owners have a certain level of coverage or the certain price point specifically with flood insurance. And a lot of people were grandfathered in and sort of were increasing in increments. So whatever they're paying now. So I always tell people if you're looking at a waterfront home and you're looking for insurance, don't base it on what the current owner is paying. Talk to someone. To determine how much it's going to be when you take it over, because it can vary greatly. Yes, it can.
Even with homes, because another person could have a home with the same carrier for 25 years and they have a rate that, started 25 years ago. The rates today are very different. And even though that has increased over time, it will be re-rated with a new policy.
The last question I have for you is a lot of times people don't understand why they need to be, and we discussed this a little bit earlier, why they need to bring in someone, the insurance agent, that soon into the process of home purchasing. But one of them we discussed was so that you can understand the history and the claims and all of that. But the other one is when you're going through that buying process, discuss what that looks like with the insurance, because I haven't had it happen, but there have been times where things have happened and there's been a major wind event or a tree's fallen on a property and things like that. Can you discuss that a little bit?
I think it's very important to bring in an insurance agent early on in the process because there could be so many variables. If that home has 2 claims on it in the past 3 years, that also could be an issue.
Okay.
So if you bring them on early in the process, it gives you plenty of time or enough time to go through dot all the I's, cross all the T's. I think I said that phrase backwards. The cross the T's, dot the I's. But it allows someone to walk you through it to make it seamless. And isn't that what you want? You want as seamless as possible for the buyer and the seller. And when you wait, too many things come up. There's too many variables. You don't know what could come up, but if you do it right at the beginning, you have plenty of time to walk through all the pieces you need. And I like to go to my underwriter beforehand because most carriers will send someone out to inspect the property after you buy the home. So you settle, your insurance starts. They have 45 days. The insurance carrier has 45 days to actually go back and say, hey, this doesn't meet underwriting.
Oh, interesting.
So most carriers are sending out someone to inspect the property. Now, their goal isn't to not write the policy, but they just want to make sure that you meet underwriting standards. And for the most part right now, it's just outside is all they're doing. That's all I've seen. So they just get a picture of the front and the back. They're looking at the roof. They're making sure trees aren't touching the home, making sure there's no liability risks, that there's handrails and, no one's going to be injured on your property. So when someone comes to me, I get pictures, I go out to the property, or at least I get pictures of the property. And if I have concerns, I bring it up to my underwriter at the beginning. So that so it's not even that it gets a settlement, but when it is, they move into the home, the inspector goes out, there's no issues. Because that's the other last thing that you want is an inspection, and then them come to us and say, here's a list of things they need to do.
Right.
Which isn't necessarily common, but why have a hurdle, if you need to?
Right.
Why not be proactive, make sure that the house is going to go through, we're going to not have any issues before, we're not going to have any issues afterwards. And to do that, you do need to disclose what the work you've done, and any claims, and have the roof discussion.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that I try to let people know, and it's very important, like you just stated, is for people to keep the records of things.
Oh, yes.
Keep records of everything, digital, hard copy, whatever it is, keep records of everything, because that can save you in instances like that. Because if you have all the records and everything's there and you've done everything the way it was supposed to be done, there's no issues. But sometimes people misplace, or they're in the middle of moving. They keep it in a binder or keep it somewhere digitally where you have it and you have access to it.
I think that is so important, and people don't think about it. When you're owning your you do a renovation, you update the electrical, you renovate the bathroom, do some plumbing work. If you can keep those records, you also make it so much smoother. And your buyer may have a less expensive policy.
Right.
Because when we can update, the roof, if we can update the roof, if we can we can have an accurate date for the roof, then the roof age does impact the premium. So if we can have an accurate date for the roof, also with the dwelling value, if they know like this amount of work's been done, this is the work's been done, we can make sure that we have the home insured as it needs to be.
Well, that leads me to a very good point, is how often should someone connect with you, like on an annual basis, and say, oh, these are the updated, or these are the things we just did? Because I think sometimes people don't even think about it. They get in their insurance and set it and forget it, but then they do these things to their home.
Yes.
How often should someone check in with you?
Anytime you do a project over $5,000.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You should call your insurance advisor, let them know, let them document it, let them increase the dwelling value, and then you know that it's going to be taken care of. The last thing you want is a claim issue, and the only time I've really seen claim issues really arise is when the adjuster thinks you're trying to do like a renovation, like improve your home, because insurance builds back your home as it was. So if you have the documentation of, we've redid the bathroom, here's pictures of the bathroom, we've redone the kitchen, we have pictures of the bathroom. If you have that documentation, it makes the claim process so much smoother, because they're going to pull it and be like, oh yes, they have, they have marble, countertops. Like, this isn't going to be an argument. It just makes it so much easier. And in that time of stress with a claim, which I think no one also thinks that it's going to happen to them. Right. But I had a few years ago that freeze in Annapolis, that winter freeze, I think it was 3 years ago. I had a client call from Florida. Her pipe had burst in her kitchen, newly renovated, extremely nice high-end kitchen. Pipe burst in her kitchen and in her business studio as well.
Oh my gosh.
She was in Florida. Water covering the floor for the kitchen and the studio. And she called bawling. Of course, you've just renovated your home. She had documentation of everything that had been done. The insurance paid for her to live somewhere else, because that's the loss of use, paid for her to live somewhere else while the work was being done. And because she had the business coverage, paid for her business to rent out somewhere else.
Wow.
While the work was being done. And yes, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight with insurance and with your contractors. But she was able to restore her home as it was, and insurance paid for it.
That's great.
So letting your agent know is very important when you do those renovations. And also keeping an eye out on your dwelling value, because the cost to rebuild, a lot of people have had policies for a long time. The cost to rebuild even 5 years ago, but 10 years ago, is so different than now. So if you have a total loss and you have extended replacement costs, which generally gives you 20 to 25% on top of your dwelling value, that is the max they will pay out. When they hit that number, even if you cannot rebuild your home, you're not going to get any more out. So that is one important thing to stay on top of, is your dwelling value. Making sure that you can rebuild your home with the dwelling value, plus if you have extended replacement costs, plus that additional percentage.
And then that leads me down, this is where last.
That's good. I could talk about insurance all day.
And I have so many questions, but I know we only have so much time. But if you have a trust, talk to me about how you should insure because that was one of the things we didn't understand when we put together our trust. Talk to me about how you should insure something when you have a trust.
A trust is very important to understand with insurance. It is important to discuss this with your agent if you have a trust, because it has to be added. The name has to be added onto your insurance policy. So it is very easy to do, but it really does have to be on there, or it could mess you up if there was a claim.
Yeah, that was something that you just don't think you set up the trust.
Right.
You don't think about it, but all the little homework that you get to do that, and that's something that's really important.
Right.
So I made sure that I called
and if you have an agent that you trust, you can call them and just ask these questions, or send an email and just ask these little questions. Just make sure you're set up. Often the home is like one of the biggest assets that someone owns, so we want to protect it well. So you want to have an agent that you feel comfortable having the conversation with and making sure that you are adequately insured and covered.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, I'll make sure I have Lauren's contact information and website in the descriptions, and feel free to leave a comment, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.